Yeah, the economy to them is just a system created so billionaires can maintain their wealth. Yeah, I just like I don't quite understand why people are still defending this economy, like the economy. You know, I just think you got to be like completely outside the norm. Now, okay, let me show this because now I feel like I've hyped it. I'm not going to show a lot of this, but I feel like this opening is enough for me to really bounce off of.
Whole life. And one time I just came across a video that was about Biden and Kamala Harris and Clinton and Obama. They are Satan worshipers, Satanists. They're Satan worshipers, 100%. And I couldn't wait to tell my family. And they just go, they just said, you're crazy, Trump's the worst.
How does that make you feel?
Sad, I cry all the time. But I just keep praying. That's all I do. I just keep praying and asking God to open their eyes. I have a beautiful family. They're just blind.
Which family member do you miss the most?
Probably my baby sister. I told her we're in a spiritual warfare. This is between good and evil, and she rolled her eyes.
What was her name?
Meg. We go and have wine together and lunch together, and it's gone.
You wish you had never stumbled upon.
Once you learn, you don't turn back. I know what God wants of us and what Jesus wants, and it's what Trump wants, and it's what the patriots want. I would never turn back, no matter how many of my family I lose.
Where we going? We go up!
So that's intense, right? Like, that's intense. Like, what this fellow has actually captured with that particular interview, in my view, is like the kind of essence of this movement. And my position, I'm actually like, I am not like a QAnon guy, obviously, but my heart really goes out to these people because I do think here's the controversial statement, okay? This is the controversial statement, especially in a society that really wants to push these guys out, that really wants to make it so QAnon is silenced. They do experience a lot of censorship, a lot of getting pushed out for various reasons. I am sympathetic to them because I actually do believe that at the base, like the foundation of the movement is actually rooted in truth. That the foundation of the movement is rooted in truth. That they know that something has gone very wrong with America. They know that the Democratic leadership, at least, is not to be trusted and is, deeply evil. And they are. Like, they are, right? Like, to call them Satan worshipers and all that kind of stuff, that's just kind of an articulation of it. But, like, does it matter if they worship Satan? Like, you've got literally Joe Biden bombing Somalia. He bombed Syria recently. Like, the destruction of Libya. Like, the cackling face of Hillary Clinton, right? Like, I mean, if they don't actively worship Satan, like, Satan probably likes them, right? Like, the sad truth about QAnon is that they have been co-opted. And that's the lesson, right? That's the lesson, if you ask me, about QAnon, is that people like this are being co-opted.
My Q flag. They don't like my Q mo.
Like, all of this Democrat and anti-government energy and all of this energy that's saying something really horrible has gone wrong in our society, and it's impossible to deny that. Like, here's something that I'll definitely say. I will put QAnon above denialists. People who think that capitalism is great and capitalism is working and the whole thing is completely fine and that the problem is you and that you got to work harder, you're beneath a QAnon guy to me. Because at least a QAnon guy has acknowledged that something's going wrong, right? At least a QAnon guy is saying, hey, the world seems to be collapsing, right? At least a QAnon guy is walking around being like, it's wrong that housing prices are going off the rails. It's wrong that that we're in these never-ending godless wars. It's wrong that we're in this position where our taxes are going up, but we've got no social services, we've got no anything. Like these things are morally wrong, and then they get up to that point where I'm like, yeah, bud, yes, absolutely, you're right on the money. Let's go, absolutely correct. And then they go, and Donald Trump will come and save us all. And it's like, And it's happening because the movement is being co-opted, right? Because the people who began that movement went into the Republican Party, much in the same way that like the Tea Party did, right? Much in the same way that the Tea Party goes into the Republican Party and then is co-opted ultimately. And the QAnon movement has also been co-opted. And it's been co-opted. And Donald Trump, and I don't think that there's some like big, grand, like CIA put this together conspiracy kind of thing. I just think that the timing of it is so unfortunate that at the same time that a movement of QAnon people came in to the Republican Party saying something's gone wrong with America, things are incorrect, what the fuck is going on? There was an outsider, a popular, well-known outsider that was also running, and who is an astute and capable grifter, and manages to convince these people, many of whom already have like messianic kind of ways of thinking, that they have like a messianic viewpoint, that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment and will save us all, that kind of messianic view of the world, and he gladly like allows them to see him as their Messiah, right? That Donald Trump will come in and clear the swamp and arrest all these people, and then America will get back on track, right? And it's and when you actually like state it as cleanly as this, where like a group of Americans think the world has gone wrong, guess what? It has, very obviously. We can all agree with that. And they have been co-opted by a grifter in a far-right fascist party into believing that the problem isn't like the structure of America, the problem is the Democratic Party, right? And once you see that, and you understand that, in my view, the biggest problem with the QAnon movement is that they don't have an accurate critique of how their system and their society works. That they're operating kind of from a place of ignorance. They don't really know how the capitalist structure works. They don't have a critique of capitalism. And because they're so entrenched in the Republican Party, and because they're so entrenched in this idea of like America and capitalism and all this kind of stuff, if you actually come at them with a critique of capitalism, then they're just like, oh, you're just like a commie or a socialist, just like Biden. Right? Right? And so they're very, like, my heart goes out to them because I think they are fighting from a position of truth and fighting from a position of righteousness, but they don't know anything, and they're very gullible, and the very people who they should be listening to in order to actually ameliorate the suffering that they acknowledge exists, which makes them better than the capitalists, or the capitalist defenders, the very people they should be listening to, they can just write off as commies and socialists, right? And the power structure is somewhat aware of this, that it's very important. It's very important to keep QAnon away from groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all that. It's very important that these two groups stay away from one another, because they are ostensibly allies, right? They have exactly the same complaints. They have exactly the same concerns. They have exactly the same problems with the world as it's going on. And the solutions to their problems are exactly the same. but you gotta keep them separate. And you can see this happen over and over again in American politics. It's no coincidence that at the same time that the Occupy Wall Street movement is happening, the Tea Party movement is happening. It's no small coincidence. And the difference was that the Tea Party allowed itself to get co-opted by the Republican Party, whereas the Occupy movement refused to be co-opted by the Democratic Party, and that the danger of the Occupy movement was to the establishment was that the Occupy movement started to merge the Tea Party's concerns with the Occupy movement. It was coming from the Occupy movement, because the Tea Partiers were saying the problem is government, right? And the occupiers initially were saying the problem is corporations, right? So the problem is corporations, the problem is government, the problem is corporations, the problem is government. Well, it was the occupiers who eventually started to put together that, wait a minute, the problem isn't corporations exclusively, and the problem isn't government exclusively. The problem is that these two forces have merged in a political ideology known as fascism. That's the concern, that they've merged with one another. And the moment they started to put that together, they started to actually go talk to these Tea Party guys, and in the streets, no less. And the Tea Party guys and the occupiers were starting to talk to one another, and that's when the encampments get cleared. The encampments get cleared at the exact moment when the Tea Partiers and the occupiers start to talk to one another. Because if both of those groups actually concluded and came to the understanding that the problem is that business and corporations have merged in a fascist arrangement in order to oppress the populace, that would be very dangerous to the establishment. That would be a very, very, very dangerous thing. And so the QAnon people, and honestly, like, again, my heart goes out to them because they're so easy to manipulate because they don't know anything. That's the biggest problem with the Q movement, and they replace knowledge with their suspicions, right? That they have a suspicion, and they're really susceptible to conspiracy theory. They're really susceptible to just like, you can waste a lot of time in a movement if they can get like winding on a conspiracy, right? You can waste a lot of their time, and QAnon does waste a lot of time. Like a lot of time. Like, just think of what would happen if QAnon suddenly realized, wait a minute, the Republicans are in with the Democrats. The Republicans and the Democrats are on the same side, and they're fighting with corporations in order to keep us all poor. What the fuck do you think would happen in American politics if the QAnon crowd figured that out? Right? And it's very important that they don't. It's very important that they don't figure that out. And that's the heart of the manipulation of the QAnon movement. QAnon just needs to realize who their enemy really is. Exactly, Mocked. That's exactly what it is. Like, they see Donald Trump as their ally. And that is like the cornerstone of their weakness. It's the reason why they can't be successful in their quest to actually ameliorate suffering. That that if they realized that Donald Trump was just a grifter, and they realized that the Republican Party was not working in their interests at all, then some real shit would happen in America, man. It would happen real fast. Like, these QAnon people are motivated, dude. Just see what happened January 6th. Right? These QAnon people are fucking motivated. They know. Like, they know some shit needs to happen. The trouble is that they have been funneled into this belief that the problem is the Democrats. And I mean, the problem is the Democrats, but it is also the Republicans. And I just don't know that they're equipped to handle that in serious ways. So, Ruth, you're saying Qs are a cult. They were used by Republicans as their base. People belonged to something other than made them look forward to something. What was said didn't matter. And there's something to that, too. And this is talking to an element as well, Ruth, that I think is important to talk about, which is that, like, this is why it is extremely dangerous to allow organizations like the CIA, who are explicitly there to lie and deceive and to be duplicitous to the people around them and to the society. That's why it's extremely dangerous to allow an organization like the CIA to exist. Because people don't know what to believe, right? People don't know what to believe. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know what to look at. They don't know who to listen to, right? And so, yeah, of course they're going to end up in crazy, silly, absurd kind of places. Of course they're going to end up there, right? Because it's just a matter. It's just inevitable. It's just inevitable. If you took 100 people, gave them no information, showed them the world, this much of the world, and said to them, create a theory about what's happening, most of them are going to come up with some crazy shit that doesn't connect to anything and isn't logical at all, right? And if you've got them all isolated in their own little place, but you can go around and talk to all of them, well, then you can manipulate them, and it's easy to do. And a big thing, you are correct in saying that it is a cult, because their allegiance to Donald Trump is unshakable. And that allegiance is strictly based on the fact that Donald Trump is this kind of quote-unquote political outsider from their perspective, right? That he's this political outsider that's going to come in and drain the swamp. And so strong is their desire that this draining of the swamp occur that they're willing to completely push in and create any kind of rationalization that they can in order to support him. But because they don't have an actual critique of capital, because they don't actually have a critique of the economic system, they don't understand that Donald Trump is their enemy. They don't understand that Donald Trump is allied to the very system that QAnon wants to drain the swamp. Because they see Donald Trump as an outsider, when he is very explicitly not and never has been. And this really just comes from, a lack of an understanding that the corporate sector and the government sector have merged, and that Donald Trump was on the corporate side of this equation for his whole life and decided to get into the government sector, but he's never been an outsider. He was born in a skyscraper. And if you don't have a conceptualization of class, if you don't have an understanding of class systems and capitalist systems and how they have co-opted and taken over governmental systems, then you can live in this kind of dream world where Donald Trump is coming in and he'll go in there and clean the swamp. And it's very, naive, and there's, a childishness to it. But in my view, it does come from this genuine sense of we're fighting on the side of righteousness. And so my conclusion when it comes to QAnon is that if you are a Black Lives Matter person, and if you are an Antifa person, you got to start talking to these guys. You got to start talking to these guys because they want to do what's right. They want to make America better. They want to improve things. They want things to flourish, and they want a better society. They just don't know what they're talking about. And the most dangerous moment that could possibly happen to the establishment structure would be if QAnon woke up and realized, oh, these guys have been grifting us this whole time. And then you'd see some shit go down. Right? It'd be like we've all seen this movie or this television show where there's been a grifter who's been grifting people. And there's the protagonist who sees that he's a grifter, right? He knows, but he can't prove it. He can't show it, right? He doesn't have like the linchpin. But there's always that moment where the grifter is outed in front of everybody. And what happens every single time that happens? The whole populace turns against that guy and chases him right out of town. Or maybe chases him towards a noose. So it's a dangerous game that the establishment structure is playing. It's a very dangerous game because the QAnon people have shown that they are willing to mobilize, that they are willing to put shit on the line, right? And right now, these Republicans, I think, are just happy that they're not turning on them. That's it. Because if they do, some serious shit is going to happen in America. Some serious shit is going to happen. So, but again, and I'll say it over and over and over again, and I do believe this to be the truth. And I got a warning strike for saying this on a thing once. I think that the QAnon people are entrenched in a righteous truth, and that righteous truth is that something is going wrong in America, and that by itself makes them better than the capitalists. That's how low the bar is, guys. These are who our allies need to be.